You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
After years of hearings at City Hall in the aftermath of one police shooting after another, when the crowd, mostly black citizens, converged on the Law and Public Safety Committee of City Council on Monday, nobody was any longer in the mood to talk or listen. In the face of a city leadership seemingly frozen in place with no clear proposal for what to do, but be patient, the action moved from political chambers to the streets. Within hours, protests in front of police headquarters teetered on the edge of violence. On Tuesday, sporadic violence became more commonplace and by nightfall erupted in force in Over the Rhine. When the violence intensified on Wednesday and Wednesday night, it spread to other neighborhoods. The city declared a state of emergency, imposed a curfew on Thursday, and brought in reinforcements, at least temporarily returning calm to the streets. Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. This past week has certainly been eventful. It may or may not prove to be pivotal in redefining the future of police-community relations, the future of efforts to attract businesses and residential housing into Over the Rhine and downtown in general, the future of the city's ability to reverse the outflow of population to the suburbs that it was made so evident in the 2000 census figures. We tape on Friday morning, but Newsmakers does not air until Sunday morning. Given the rapidity with which events have moved this week, it seemed to me that the best thing to do is to try to turn our attention back to the long-term questions. Immediately, the challenge is to stop the violence, but ultimately, this is a policy issue. And that puts council back into the center of things to examine the options that may be available. I am joined this morning by three members of Cincinnati City Council. Minette Cooper is the vice mayor of the city. Alicia Reese is the youngest elected woman member of council, as she reminds me often. And Paul Booth is a long-term member of City Council. To all of you, welcome back to Newsmakers, and thank you for being here this morning. I know this is difficult times for all of you. Right now, and I do want to focus on the long term. Vice Mayor Cooper, what is it that you would see as a one or two realistic things that City Council can do that changes the dynamic in the long run?
Well, the first thing I think we should do, Dan, is I have a motion that many members of council have signed to put the initiative on the ballot to change how we select our police chief and fire chief. That's a first step. That will put it on the ballot, then we will have to work hard to get that done. That's voters.
You know, realistically, that essentially, I haven't seen the details of your proposal, but essentially that was on the ballot, if I'm not mistaken, 4 years ago?
4 years ago.
Is it essentially the same proposal?
Definitely the same proposal.
Okay.
And that would be a first step.
And do you think people are better prepared to address that, to pass it this time?
Absolutely. The number of we've had 4 deaths this year. They know that we need to make change because the problem's systemic, obviously.
And why would that change things? What would that allow the city to do that we can't do now?
That would allow the city manager to select a chief of police or fire out of a greater pool. Currently, the chief has to be selected from the top 3 test scores according to our civil service laws. And this would allow the city manager to go through the nation or in the city and pick somebody he thought had the skills to lead the police department in the direction in which he thinks they should go in.
And if my understanding is correct, to get that on the ballot, you need 6 signatures, the support of 6 council members.
We absolutely do.
And how many do you have at this point?
I have 5.
You have 5.
And I may have more, but I have not. I have 5 that I'm sure of.
And 5 are?
Myself, Councilmember Booth, the mayor, Councilmember Cranley, and I think you, Ms. Reese. Yes.
Okay, so you need 1 more of the 4 that are left.
I need 1 more of the 4 that are left. But I'd like to see a unanimous signature on that, and I believe that all of us are concerned about it and will address it in that manner.
Alicia, what about you? What do you think is the sort of structural long-term changes that we can make?
Well, I think a couple things. First of all, we have to signify a strong, bold statement that we're for change. Number one, I think it's important that in our safety department, which is the liaison between the police chief and the administration. It's time for new leadership. It's time for us to have a person or that department structured that is proactive on police-community relations, not making police-community relations just a buzzword when an incident happened, but is proactive on those issues and has the experience of dealing with the diversity that exists in the city.
So you've called for the replacement this past week of Kent Ryan.
Yes, I have.
You still stand there?
I do. I've asked for new leadership that can deal with the diversity, can be proactive on police-community relations. Police-community relations can't just come from the community in. It's got to come from the administration as well as the community to partner with it so that we can have follow-up. We haven't had that.
One question in my mind is why Kent Ryan as opposed to the city manager? In this case, John Shirey. Does Ryan do what Shirey tells him to do, and where is the real issue here?
Well, I think certainly the administration from the manager down has to be an issue that is dealt with. However, that department is the department that oversees and is the liaison between the police chief and the administration. When you look at this case, we waited too long to have press conference to inform the public. We've been talking about police-community relations before I even got on council for almost 5 or 6 years,
Well,
maybe 10
none of these
years.
issues are new.
No, they're not new issues, but we've always come with some legislation, which is important, but now it's time to deal with the person who administers that, the overseer of that, and it's nothing personal. I just think it's time for someone who has the expertise, the experience, and can be proactive on police-community relations. So that's one thing that I think needs to happen.
Let me get Paul into this. Paul, do you agree with both of these proposals? And I'll come back, Minette, and ask you about Alicia's. And if so, beyond that, are there things that you think need to be done?
Sure, I would support both of those proposals. I think there is a need for a change in leadership, and certainly the way that we select the chief and the fire chief are very important. Beyond that, there are a couple of things that I've done. I think in June of 2000, I introduced a motion that we conduct a policy or cultural audit of the police department. Not popular, but I introduced that motion early on so that we could take a look at our police department from top to bottom to find out what in our policies and procedures could be improved the way that we do business. The other proposal that I was going to introduce and that I'm still holding at this point was the rotating shifts of the police officers. Obviously very sensitive because our veteran officers that have stature and that have tenure obviously are due to select the shift that they work. But there are many citizens that also think that it's important that somehow we pair veteran officers with rookie officers, those officers who have less experience.
And one of the issues that has been the case in many of these incidents has been the inexperience of street officers. So that proposal is trying to get the people with more experience out in the immediate on the street situation.
At the shift where most of these incidents happen.
Can I raise the fact, though, that that's a contractual issue, is it not?
Obviously.
It's part of the next police contract negotiation.
That's right.
Aren't there other things? What about the issue of the way police conduct is reviewed, and then people who are disciplined or fired can then appeal? We've ended up with a situation where police officers being brought back into service when the police administration didn't want them there. Are those also things we can get at?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We really have to change, in addition, we have to change the use of the state civil service, because that is what is keeping these people in place. And that's why the manager is handicapped. The officer that was in trouble and reviewed, arbitrated, and is on his way to promotion is falling under that.
Officer Hall.
Officer Hall. I thought it was Hill. We have to review.
It's Hill.
We have to review the hiring and training practices, but the biggest thing is we have no accountability. There are no consequences. Certainly they get in some difficulty. They may get put off desk duty, but finally, at the end of the day, they get their jobs back. So the bottom line is, if they can wade through the storm, if they can stay there, they're back in business.
One of the questions I have, Alicia, I mean, none of these proposals, the situation isn't new. None of the proposals that have been laid out here are brand new. They've been talked about for some time. Why was it last Sunday or Monday? Why is nobody capable of putting together a package of things and saying, this is how things are going to change? You know, politics is often about symbolism. Somebody's head has to roll. You've suggested that. It's often about, here's what we can do immediately in terms of policy changes, and here's what we're going to try to do when the negotiations come up for the next contract. It seems to me that early in the week, there was no articulation of a package of steps. Why isn't that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and that's the reason we're in the state that we're in. There has been a notion that people will just come down, they will just vent, and then we'll allow the problem to continue to fester. As you recall, I have been very vocal immediately saying that we have to have a new safety director for New Direction. Number two, there has to be a commitment. I think we have police-community relations problems, but it goes a little deeper than that. We also have issues of affordable housing. I've heard that. I've been out on the streets and I've talked to people, and they say, hey, we've been displaced out of the West End. You don't want to fight for affordable housing. We've been supportive of affordable housing, but we haven't been able to get some of those things passed, Fort Washington Hotel, etc. The other issue is around summer youth employment. We've fought for summer youth employment programs, and I believe it should be grandfathered into our city budget that employs 1,000 youth. Well, a couple weeks ago, that was not important, but now people are willing to listen. So I think what you're saying is very, very important. It takes not only the city council, but it also takes support of the business community. If there's a ballot initiative that goes on the ballot, what's important is having the money to be able to promote the issue and having a commitment from the business community to help promote that. And immediately having our council members to support the initiatives that we're talking about, ballot initiative, new leadership in the safety department, and support of social programs that help with jobs and affordable housing.
Okay, I want to move this along just a little bit, and to do that, on Thursday evening, Kwesi Mfume, the president of the National NAACP, visited Cincinnati, and it's a presentation to a group of people gathered at the New Friendship Baptist Church in Avondale. He addressed the need for structural change.
We don't want to burn down, we want to build up. We want to build up our political involvement. Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do, because politics are us. It's a mirror of society. You don't like what's going on? It's because we haven't moved to change it. You know what they did in South Africa when they didn't like what was going on? They moved to change it. Nelson Mandela didn't come to power because he just woke up one morning and wanted to be there. You had 20 million black people who said they were sick and tired of the system.
You know, one of the things, Paul, that strikes me is that every time one of these incidents takes place, we try to treat it as an isolated thing. You know, well, let's wait for the report from, you know, the prosecutor. Let's just deal with this rather than this is a pattern of things, a bigger issue. And I think what President Mfume was saying was that it's also structural change on the political level. I mean, it seems like Cincinnati just sort of goes along, and we're going into this fall's political campaign for council, and it's just sort of, well, you know, does there need to be some sort of fundamental political change?
Well, there needs to be clear changes. And of course, Mark Twain said it best, you know, when the world comes to an end, he wants to be in Cincinnati because everything happens 10 years later there.
As a historian, I got to say, I've never found that in print, but it sounds right.
Well, listen, we credit him to that, but the point is well,
right.
The point is well made. But yes, we obviously need structural change. But whenever you're dealing with police issues in Cincinnati, they're very sensitive. They're very tough to deal with because our police department is entrenched. It's obviously a very good police department, but it's crying for changes. Proposals that I have introduced, I started on those long ago. We're talking about listening. We need to listen to people. I proposed in June of 1999, I think it was, that we need to establish a youth advisory council so that we can listen to our youth. We're going to be rolling out a series of town meetings. We're going to have the first ever youth town meeting that's conducted by the neighborhood department, where we begin to really listen and to really deal with the issues that we really have not been
And clearly
appropriately
that
dealing
sort
with.
of break has become very clear in this last week, of the break between the leadership who may feel the issues and the young people on the street who are out in the street. And there's really a break.
You know, Dan, one of the things I think we need to evaluate is whether or not we need a safety director, because the safety director is a buffer between the manager, who is really the CEO of our city, and the two chiefs of the two major safety departments. So we need to look into that and see the value of it.
Whether that is
Whether that's a
is even-
necessary position, because the manager, the two chiefs don't even go to the meeting with the rest of the staff, so they do not get that kind of communication.
We're almost out of time, but can I ask, over the last couple of months, before this latest shooting, was there any sort of direct order given to the police to do anything different? I mean, or do we just go from incident to incident? What did anybody say to the police? Look, you know, avoid at all cost shooting, getting yourselves into these situations. Was there any policy change on the police?
I don't think that happened.
Or do we know?
I don't think that we've learned anything from shooting to shooting. Something as simple as properly notifying the family immediately after the shooting, or at least within a reasonable period of time after the shooting. So we have to learn from these incidents so that we can carry forward, and so that they're not repeated.
But equally as important is pursuit. When you pursue somebody, why are we pursuing people with energy that are doing something bad? How can you chase somebody with 14 misdemeanors and him end up dead? Why were you chasing him at all? You chase people that are having an immediate threat. You make a difference. That was not making a difference. That was like doing something unnecessary, and for the goal, the outcome to be what it was,
Alicia,
unacceptable.
we're just about out of time.
I just want to say real quickly, when you talk about the disconnect between young people and government, and I've been involved with Youth 2000. It brought police and youth together. We can't just start talking to the youth when we have a problem like this. We have to act on the youth ideas and have a permanent youth development department in the city of Cincinnati, where youth have a permanent place and become a part of the administration.
Now, there's a policy, there's a proposal I haven't heard before, but okay, there's one out on the table. So good luck over the next weeks putting this together, but I think it's time that somehow our elected leadership does find a way to put this package of proposals together and actions together and moves this city forward. And thank you for being here this
Good
morning.
to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Stay tuned. Over the week, politicians, ministers, leaders of all stripes have been interviewed over and over. After the break, a voice closer to the people in the streets. During the past week, the Over the Rhine has become ground zero, and no matter how many news reports a person watches, what has been happening looks very different if your address is 14th and Walnut or Maple Street in the suburbs. Welcome back. I wanted to talk with somebody who lives and works in Over the Rhine, who knows lots of people, and might provide a different voice than the established leaders that everybody's been interviewing. Calvin Wooten is a resident of Over the Rhine and works as a treatment coordinator at the Joseph House on Vine Street. Calvin, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thanks, Dan.
Just very quickly, because it's not the focus of what we're doing today, what is Joseph House, so people know?
Joseph House is a residential in-house treatment program for homeless veterans dealing with drug addictions, PTSD, mental illness, and things of that nature.
Okay, and this is on Vine Street, so
Yes, 1519 Vine.
And you also live in Over the Rhine.
Yes, I do.
How long have you lived there?
I lived in Over the Rhine for the past 5 years.
Okay. Given the nature of your job and your residence, are you surprised that things exploded and took the path that they took this week?
Not real surprised. I didn't expect it to get to the level it got to, but there was a lot of feelings of unjust, that the incident wasn't being addressed and questions weren't being answered, and that kind of led to the uprising.
Who do you think and there's been a lot of discussion about who was out in the streets at night. Was it the same people who were at City Hall on Monday? What's your take as a person who may be looking out the window? Who were the people who were taking part in some of the damage and the crowds?
It was a lot of young people, a lot of teenagers, a lot of them not from the neighborhood, and that's mainly who it was, probably in the 16 to 25 age category.
Now, you know, you're a resident of Over the Rhine. I know you know people who have businesses there, who work
Right.
there in a variety of different situations, who weren't on the streets.
Definitely.
What's it been like for people like that?
They've just been trying to hold on to their businesses. Some of them were still in good spirits even after their businesses were broken into. I spoke with a couple of the business owners as they were boarding up their windows, and they were saying they had a positive outlook on things and hopeful for their future and their business and keeping it in Over the Rhine. And they were saying they were going to assess the damages and see if they can come up with a plan to stay here in Over the Rhine.
So there, for at least some of the people that you talked to, the intent was still to stay. They're not giving up, that whatever.
Right. A lot of them were sympathetic to what happened to the young black being shot. And they felt, some of them felt like it shouldn't have happened also, and things should have been addressed earlier and sooner with answers to what went on.
You were sitting here while I was interviewing the three council people, members of council, the
Yes.
first part of the show. For the people, the average person in Over the Rhine, do they feel connected to city council, to city leaders at all?
The average person in Over the Rhine doesn't participate in what's going on at city council. They do watch the news and shows like yours to be informed, but as far as being an active participant in a lot of the things that are going on, the average citizen in Over the Rhine just doesn't participate.
Before this week, I'm not talking about in the midst of all this attention and whatever, but are there certain council people who do try to pay attention, meet people on the street, meet people informed? Is council a presence at all in a neighborhood like Over the Rhine?
Yes, council appears at different functions in Over the Rhine, and they do have a presence there, and they do spend time near here and there trying to work with the people, understand what needs to be done, and they do have a presence.
Do you think it would make any difference if, for not just people in Over the Rhine, West End, lots of neighborhoods that are the poorer neighborhoods in our city, if we had a council system based on districts where, in effect, they from that neighborhood had a representative on council who was their voice they could identify with, not just these 9 people elected at large? Do you think that'd make any difference?
Yes, I think it would get sections of the community more connected and more involved with city council. If they had direct issues that were being presented to city council that directly affects them and the area that they live in, I think that could be an effective way to keep them engaged and get some outcomes.
What would you like to see happen coming out of this week of turmoil? And hopefully, as we say, we're taping on Friday morning, so we don't know, but hopefully the worst is over. But whenever it ends, what would you like to see happen for the people in Over the Rhine?
I would like to see some closure put to the incident of the shooting, and I would like to see these businesses open back up, and hopefully they'll come up with some funding for the less fortunate businesses that couldn't have insurance to help out with the damages and things. I'd like to see Over the Rhine open back up, put back together, and continue to grow and prosper for the area.
We only have about 30 seconds, but for an agency like yours, and there's a lot of small agencies, and for your clients, what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see my clients personally grow from this experience and learn as much as they could from it.
Are they being buffeted right now, or is this a tough time for you as a counselor?
It's been tough. There's been a lot of unrest in our agency with clients of black and white color, and we're holding together as a family, and we're getting through it together. So
Okay.
we're in pretty good shape.
Well, good luck for the work, and thank you for the work you do. And we'll have you back to talk about Joseph House specifically in the future.
Okay.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women who are shaping our community for the future. Have a good week.